Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. Brought to you by Grove Street FM and hosted by Town Manager Bart Warner. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, November 15th, and you are listening to the Best Little Town Podcast. My name is Bart Warner. I have the privilege of serving as the town manager of Bedford, and we have worked with our partners at Grove Street FM to develop this show to provide another layer of information, insight, and accountability into the operations of the town and provide a recap of what actions the leadership are taking and what issues may be impacting you. And we also want to know what issues are of importance to you. So as much as I'm going to talk this morning in this first episode about a recap of last night's council meeting, I want to invite you to reach out to me directly. Probably the best way to do that is via email at bwarner@bedfordva.gov. If there is a question you have anytime, I'm happy to hear from you because that's what you pay me to do. But also there might be something that you bring to my attention that probably is important to your neighbors as well, and we will bring that to the attention of council and also try to cover it publicly in this podcast and in our other outlets. So again, just wanted to thank you very much for your time and attention and explain to you what we're trying to accomplish here. And we'll jump right into what's been happening directly with town council and specifically the actions that were taken at last night's council meeting. This is a good time to mention that the town council meets on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month at 7 o'clock p.m. upstairs in the council chambers at 215 East Main Street. We love to have people show up personally. We do have opportunities for people to sign up and speak directly to council about, frankly, anything that's on your mind. We also broadcast live. We also stream those videos of the meetings, so they're always available. Again, we want people to know what's going on. There are a lot of exciting activities underway in the town. There are a lot of changes afoot, so it's of great importance for us to have great communications with the community and throughout the community. And with that, I'm going to just start right in with recapping last night's council meeting. We had several things on the agenda last night that were covered, and I'm kind of going to go through this in order, but I'm going to swing back to a couple of the things that were discussed to provide greater detail in just a moment. As part of their regular administrative actions last night, council appointed a member to the Bedford Regional Water Authority. A lot of people still were a little confused about that and the fact that the town of Bedford is not directly responsible for water and sewer service in the town. When we were a city, we performed that role, but as part of the reversion, we joined with the Bedford County Public Service Authority to create the Bedford Regional Water Authority. That is a separate agency. It's actually kind of a quasi-government in and of itself, but they focus exclusively on providing excellent water and sewer service throughout the county. And they're a great partner and we appreciate what they do. Our direct relationship with them is that we have currently 2 positions on their board of directors that are appointed by our town council, and that's based on the number of customers in the entire system. So that's background for what the authority does in general. We did have a term that was expiring at the end of this calendar year. A gentleman named Mike Moldenauer has been serving on the board of directors for the past, I think it's 4 years. Maybe it's 3. I should double check that to make sure I give you the best information. In any event, Mr. Moldenauer expressed a willingness to continue, and council, after soliciting applications, decided to go ahead and reappoint Mr. Moldenauer. I will say we had a couple of other citizens who stepped up and indicated a willingness to serve, but then they had subsequently withdrawn their candidacies. And Mr. Moldenauer is been on that board for a long time, is a respected and active member, and provides a good level of continuity. The other thing I'll mention, though, is in addition to town council, we just had an election, and we appreciate everybody who ran. We have several opportunities for service, including the Water Authority Board. There's also the Planning Commission, the Housing and Redevelopment Authority, the Economic Development Authority, and the Keep Bedford Beautiful Commission, just to name a few. And occasionally we do have vacancies on those various boards. We advertise those in the Bedford Bulletin, but we also will be posting those on our social media outlets, including our website. So if you have a desire to serve your community and have some ideas to share and a little bit of time, we would encourage you to consider that. The next item on last night's agenda was a request to close streets for Christmas in Centertown observances. Jonathan Hayden has been our partner for a long time in decorating the Centertown Plaza and hosting an event to kind of kick off the holiday season in Bedford, although maybe some of us have already started our own observations and displays there. But Jonathan is hosting a tree lighting at Centertown Plaza, which is at the intersection of Bridge and Main. And the event will start at 2:00 p.m. on Saturday, December 2nd. And the official, if you will, town Christmas tree in Centertown Plaza will be lit at 6:00 p.m. Jonathan always does a great job with that event. It's a highlight of the community. And while I'm thinking about it, December 2nd, the first Saturday in December in Bedford is always huge. The Bedford Family YMCA will host their Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic 5K run on the Loop, which we'll talk about the Loop more in this podcast as we go along, but that's going to be Saturday morning. The Christmas parade will take place later that morning and right around noon, I believe. I need to verify that. And then we have the event in Centertown Plaza I just mentioned. Also, the National D-Day Memorial has their Flames of Memory Luminary event that weekend. And the day before that, I believe, the former Elks Home will have their annual Christmas light display. And it's just a great day of activities on that first Saturday of December, and it's one of the things Bedford's really, really renowned for. Of course, given all that, Council had no problem in approving Mr. Hayden's request. Again, mark December 2nd on your calendars. There's a lot of great activities going on in Bedford related to the holidays, including Christmas in Centertown from 2:00 to 6:00 p.m. Moving on with the agenda, one of the things we had last night was a presentation by our Public Works Director, Mr. D.W. Lawhorn. Mayor Tim Black has recently been trying to explain to the community a little bit more about the operations of the town. And beginning last month, we had a presentation from Chief Ronnie Lewis about the operations of the police department. At the second meeting in October, John Wagner came and talked to us about the electric department. And last night, D.W. Lawhorn joined us for the Public Works presentation. And I would invite everybody to go back the videos I've referenced of those meetings in October to see the information that my other colleagues presented. Very good information. Again, we want people to understand clearly how we do our jobs and what we do. And I'm blessed to work with some really talented folks at all levels of the community that provide excellent service that we're proud of. But anyway, last night, DW joined us as a continuation of that information process. And Public Works does everything. They do a lot of things that people don't really understand or may not even be aware of, but some of the obvious things are the curbside trash pickup, the curbside services such as leaf pickup, things like that. You know, trash is a weekly occurrence. That's kind of visible. It's not an easy job, but our folks are really good at it, and they pretty much have it down to a science. But in addition to that, Public Works takes care of all our facilities. And when I say that, that encompasses all the buildings that are owned by the town, and we own quite a few properties. including but not limited to the municipal building and the physical locations of each of our departments, but also all the town parks, all the streets, all the sidewalks. Anything that is owned by the town of Bedford is maintained by the Public Works Department. We also operate cemeteries in town, which is somewhat unusual for towns to do, but it's a service we provide. We used to mention when we were an independent city and had a recreation department that we provide services from cradle to the grave, truly, here in town. DW's folks are in charge of all that. They do an excellent job. And one of the things I want to point out to folks is the hardworking people in our department, there specifically, are amazing in their flexibility in addition to their technical knowledge. And whereas, we have job titles that might be fairly specific, all of our employees jump in and handle things as they're needed, and they don't really have to be directed too much to do that because they're motivated to serve the citizens and they do a great job of it. For example, when I mention the things like street maintenance, fixing sidewalks, mowing the rights of way that we own, mowing the grass, maintaining the cemeteries, picking up the trash, those are all accomplished by basically the same pool of folks. So the people who work for us, their job title might be maintenance technician, or it may be something specific to a facility, but the truth of the matter is they jump in to get things done. And D.W. Lawhorn and his staff there, they have servant hearts and they do a really good job, and I can't say enough about them. But D.W. gave a synopsis of that last night, actually more than what I just told you, and it's good information, so I'd invite you to check it out. The next item on the agenda was a presentation from the Virginia Department of Transportation, consideration of a roundabout at the intersection of Independence Boulevard, Longwood Avenue, Forest Road. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute, kind of go through the rest of the agenda, but there's a lot of information related to that probably is of interest to everybody in the community. The next item was a presentation regarding a proposed passenger rail stop in town, and I'm also going to come back and tell you a lot more about that in just a moment. Most of the other things we did last night were administrative in nature. We did make a budget amendment. We were fortunate to receive some additional funds from the state for our police department. That's referred to as 599 funds. If you're interested, you can watch the meeting and we explain what those are. But basically, it's money the state provides our police department for operational needs. It can only be used for certain things, and we're glad to get that support from the Commonwealth, and we will put it to good use. The next item on the agenda was a resolution canceling the second council meeting in December. I mentioned that we meet the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. It's not unusual for council to cancel that second meeting in December as it falls between the Christmas and New Year's holidays. And we appreciate the service that council members provide, but they're also human beings, and we don't mind them giving themselves one night off every now and again. And typically we don't have a very hefty agenda at the end of December anyway. So there will not be a meeting on December 28th next month, but we will meet December 14th. I think I'm right about those dates. A couple of other administrative things related to a request from the National D-Day Memorial related to work that they are planning to conduct on their site. The D-Day property was basically provided by what was then the city of Bedford. And when that was transferred to the foundation, the city, now the town, still retains some property around it. Occasionally, the activities at the memorial kind of butt up against our property line, and they were requesting permission to be present on our property to construct an exciting capital project that they have in mind. There will be some more details forthcoming on that because we are the government. Some of our processes are a little bureaucratic, and turns out we may have to take some more separate action on that. The last item considered last night was a resolution in support of the Virginia 250 Commission. The Virginia 250 Commission is an organization that's basically been set up in the Commonwealth to coordinate observances of the 250th anniversary of American independence, which will be coming up in 2026. I think Delegate Terry Austin is actually the head of that commission, and they are getting ahead of the curve to start coordinating activities and develop plans and asking all localities to develop planning committees. The Bedford County Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution back in September indicating their support of the program. Basically, last night, Town Council stated that we are also on board and ready to support the county, as well as the commission, in some exciting celebrations of our nation's history and our independence coming up a couple of years from now. So we look forward to some good things from that. So let me get back to the roundabout. Some folks in the community might be aware of the situation that exists at what we call the Forks intersection. And I'm calling it that because it's the location of Forks Country Restaurant, which they're not given commercial consideration, but I'll tell you, if you haven't eaten at the Forks, you need to try it. It's really good cooking. But that intersection, for folks who are familiar with it in town, or maybe folks who aren't, is pretty complicated. It's better to look on a map, but it's the intersection of 122 and 221, and it's always fun to try to keep those numbered routes separate and not confused, and I struggle to do that myself. But there is a lot of activity that takes place at that intersection. Coming from town, Longwood Avenue eastbound leads out of town. Coming from the Forest area, Forest Road comes into town. That's Route 221. Coming from the south is Independence Boulevard, which is Route 122. And coming from the north is Big Island Highway, which is the northern portion of 122. Near that intersection are the Shell gas station, which conducts a great deal of business. Advanced Auto is near there. Of course, I mentioned the Forks restaurants right there. Food Line Shopping Center is pretty close there. And then also, I mentioned Big Island Highway is the route on which Liberty High School is located, as well as Liberty Middle School. So if you're passing through town or through that intersection, particularly at about 8:20, 8:30 in the morning on weekdays, you're going to probably see a lot of traffic, and you're probably going to sit at the light for a little bit as it cycles, mainly in conjunction with the traffic going to school, and then also the folks coming back who drop off their kids, like me. Again, at about 3:30 to 3:45, you'll experience a similar condition as the Liberty High School and Liberty Middle School students are let out. We've noticed that activity for quite a long time, and our folks at the Virginia Department of Transportation have been paying careful consideration to that. We actually talked a few years ago about the issues related to that traffic and the way it functions at that intersection. And we had some discussions then about what to do about the various points of conflict at that intersection. And if you look at the map from the air, it's really complicated. We did study it in depth once about 10 years ago. And when you think about a four-way traffic intersection, there's a lot of points of conflict potentially between vehicles. In this particular case, given the fact there's also a neighborhood located kind of back behind the Food Line Shopping Center that has to have access, there are about 27 potential points of conflict at that intersection. Fortunately, we have not had very many accidents there. However, VDOT has been keeping track of that. And last night, Todd Daniel, who is our resident engineer here in Bedford, gave a presentation on their findings. And he indicated that as fortunate as we have been in that we haven't had any fatal accidents at that intersection, we are seeing an uptick in conflicts there, and there have been several accidents, some of which have included personal injury. So that's got their attention, and they're looking at possible ways to address the existing situation and also looking forward at future impacts. One of the common themes I'm going to talk to you about for as long as we put this podcast out is that Bedford is growing. Change is with us. We've been talking for years about the fact that it's coming. It's here. We have numerous projects coming out of the ground. There are numerous projects by developers being talked about that will be forthcoming. And all that contributes to some things throughout town, such as traffic, that we're going to need to examine. The Forks intersection I mentioned is just one of those. We know there's about 130 unit subdivision that's coming out of the ground on the south end of Independence Boulevard. We know that there are more people moving into our community. And so VDOT, in an effort to address safety issues primarily, is looking at ways to move that traffic more efficiently. One of their approaches, and we've seen that elsewhere, and you're probably familiar with examples around us, is to construct roundabouts, which are designed to eliminate or reduce these traffic conflicts and the impact of accidents. Now, Mr. Daniel acknowledged last night that it's a change and it's something new, and I will say personally, I think they do a good job of explaining why they're proposing these changes to these intersections. They are logical on the ground when they're here, but it's a significant change, and I'll admit that I'm a person who's somewhat resistant to that myself. But based on the presentation last night, council heard what VDOT said and agreed that this is worth looking into. And when I say that we're looking into it, there is a process whereby this could happen. And the process is this. We're looking at a funding project through the Virginia Department of Transportation that would be funded by VDOT. There would not be any local taxes involved. There would not be any town monies involved. This would be a project undertaken by the Virginia Department of Transportation through their Smart Scale program. The Smart Scale program is a pretty intensive examination of proposed projects such as this one that evaluate all the factors involved, including costs, including benefits, including impacts. There will be several opportunities for public input. I'm sure that town council will have a separate public information meeting, but what we've agreed to do is to submit an application for Smart Scale. That would initiate a process that lasts just about 2 years, in which, if it proceeded, ultimately there would be a proposed project, in this case a roundabout at that intersection, that would then be evaluated against any other projects throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. So the first thing I want to tell you is, even if there's direction to move forward with this proposal, there's no guarantees that it's going to happen anytime soon. And frankly, there's no guarantees that it's going to happen at all, because that ranking system is based on what happens throughout Virginia. And we don't really know what other applications might be forthcoming. So again, we're at the very first step of an application process that lasts approximately 2 years. If this project moved forward, and if a roundabout were approved for funding, it would then enter what's called the VDOT 6-year improvement program. And when I say 6 years, that's usually the minimum amount of time it takes to undertake a massive project such as this one. There are cases in which maybe things can be expedited if VDOT and the General Assembly determine that there's a great need, but again, typically the 6-year plan is just that. It takes 6 years to accomplish. So if this happens, and I'm still saying if, because all we're doing now is examining things, the roundabout that might actually be proposed probably wouldn't be seen here until approximately 2030 to 2032. So ideally, if this occurs, we've got time to prepare for this change and educate ourselves about it, but that's the background. So if you hear people talking about the roundabout in town, most likely this is the project we're referring to, and this is all the information we have right now. Again, stay tuned. We'll provide more information as it comes. What council did last night was approve staff to work with VDOT to develop an application. That application will be submitted in March of next year, and then we'll start accumulating a lot of data, soliciting a lot of information, and developing a plan that will then be considered. But that's the straight skinny on the Forks intersection and the roundabout there. Again, Mr. Daniel came last night. I'm going to refer to the video of the meeting. There was really good information captured that I would ask you to look at if you're interested in. The next transportation-related issue that's kind of had some buzz around town is the possibility of locating a passenger rail station within the town limits of Bedford. Recently, Amtrak in the last few years extended its service from Lynchburg to Roanoke, and that's been a pretty successful thing for Amtrak. When that first happened, let me back up a bit. The discussion of passenger rail has been ongoing for as long as I've been employed by the town of Bedford, and I came here in 2000. Folks who grew up here probably remember that we had passenger rail service here right up until about 1970 or 71, and then it was discontinued. Within the last 20 years, there's been greater interest in that, and it's become viewed as a more efficient way of intercity travel. And the fact that we happen to be along a major rail track put Bedford in the conversation. When I first came here in 2000, there was an idea called the Trans-Dominion Express, which was primarily developed through the State Department of Transportation to extend rail service throughout the Commonwealth in all corners. And I'm talking about really from Bristol down on the Tennessee line all the way to Northern Virginia. Obviously, this would be a pretty big undertaking, and at the state level, I'm not sure where that discussion happened, but eventually, since we're talking passenger rail and since Amtrak at the federal level does that in the most efficient manner, it's kind of filtered up there, and that's the service that now runs through Bedford. At certain times of day, you'll see the silver Amtrak trains pass through. In order for any locality to be considered for a stop, it has to make business sense. And Amtrak is a publicly funded agency, but they also need to cover their costs. And so one of the things is these decisions can't be purely emotional. They can't be purely political. And even though there seems to be strong emotional support among some folks in the area to have a station here in Bedford, it also has to make sense. And so for about the past 10 years, there's been a grassroots group known as the Bedford Franklin Regional Rail Initiative, comprised of people who are enthusiastic about the idea, who have been compiling information, compiling data, assisting the localities involved with conducting studies. And basically, as a result, at this point, staff at the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, that's at the state level, have determined that Bedford meets the metrics that make sense for Amtrak. So based on that, we're doing some more planning and we're starting some discussions. Last night, Mary Zirkle, who is our Director of Planning and Community Development, gave a presentation of information we'd received from DRPT about what would be involved in placing a passenger rail station in Bedford. There is some specific information that we shared last night about where it might be located. And after a lot of discussion over the years, including negotiations with Norfolk Southern, who own the rails themselves, it's been determined that the most likely place for a passenger rail station is going to be in the area on the other side of the tracks from the Bedford County Recreation Fields in the middle of town. The station would not be a full staffed caretaker station. It probably would be more of a platform with a small parking facility and possibly a kiosk where you'd get your ticket. But that would be accessed from Macon Street, which is just off of 4th Street, right in the middle of the town of Bedford. Of course, there would be several improvements that would need to be made, and there would be a local match involved. We're looking at a federal funding program for this to share some costs related to the project itself. Right now, we think the cost overall of constructing this passenger station would be a little over $20 million. But we're looking at using the federal grant that would involve federal money for that at the greater extent compared to what would need to be generated locally. For this to happen, what we're hearing currently is that 20% of that cost, which amounts to about $4.6 million, needs to be generated locally. Now, when we say generated locally, that can mean any number of things. From our perspective, while the town of Bedford is the site of the station and we would be very happy to host it, we don't think it's reasonable for that cost to be borne by the town. So we are examining other grant opportunities. We're going to be contacting our legislators. We're going to be talking to transportation folks about any other opportunities to reduce that cost. But we're also going to be talking to our neighbors in Bedford County and Franklin County. As I mentioned, that regional rail initiative, one of the things we found was that a significant number of folks in the lake view Bedford as their town, which we appreciate. And a lot of the enthusiasm for the station actually came from that area. So at the staff level, I'm going to be talking with my colleagues in Bedford County and Franklin County about their willingness to participate and what that might look like. Again, similar to the roundabout, I'm going to tell you nothing is definite yet. There's no commitment to anything happening. It's a possibility and it's something we're exploring. Time-wise, I don't really have a projection on when this might happen. The first thing we need to do is figure out what the plans look like, how much they cost, and how that would be paid for. If we figure that out, we still have to get authorization from the appropriate state and federal authorities. But for anyone who's interested in the passenger rail station issue, that's actually got some legs to it, and it's been a long process. I will say it's very possible at this point. We just don't know when. And frankly, we still don't know if. So that kind of covers everything that council talked about last night. And I did think these two particular projects might be of interest to those of you who are listening and want to provide those details. I will be back in a couple of weeks. Council meets again on December the 28th. I'm sorry. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Council meets on November the 28th. And the following Wednesday, I'll be back to provide you a recap, and I'll also look forward to providing information in an expanded way about other issues that I think you might be interested in. But again, if there's a topic that you need information about, contact me anytime. Email is probably best at bwarner@bedfordva.gov, and I'll be happy to provide more information. Again, council meets the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, unless they don't. So the next meeting dates are November 28th, December 12th. We will not be meeting December 26th, but we'll pick back up in the regular schedule in January. We hope to see you personally at our meetings, but if you can't attend personally, please log in, check out the videos, go back and look at the old videos. Feel free to contact us anytime. We're happy to get your input. We're excited about the things that are going on in the community. We also have some challenges, though, and we really need your input and your help for some of the heavy lifting there. Again, my name's Bart Warner. I serve as your town manager, and I'm happy to do anything I can to help this place out because personally, I'm happy to be here. I think Bedford's a great community. I think its best days are ahead of it, and I look forward to working with everybody to advance the world's best little town.